When you think about Russia, a lot of folks immediately picture Vladimir Putin and a country ruled by imposing male figures, with women seemingly on the sidelines of power. That view, though common, doesn't quite capture the full reality of the country. Surprisingly to some, women make up the majority of Russia's population. That fact might challenge many people's perceptions about power dynamics in Russia. In our video, we're going to dive into this lesser-known reality, questioning stereotypes and shedding light on info that might shift the way you see Russia. Stick around to uncover this fascinating perspective. As the largest nation on the planet by land area, Russia sprawls across 2 continents, Europe and Asia, and spans 11 different time zones. It stands out for ensuring universal access to essential services like healthcare and education, showing a commitment to the well-being of its people. Its logistics infrastructure, including a vast network of roads, railways, and pipelines, makes it a vital link between the Asian and European continents. Russia's economy greatly benefits from this robust infrastructure. However, the country faces international criticism due to allegations of anti-democratic practices, corruption, and suppression of freedom of speech, casting shadows over its human rights reputation. Nevertheless, it would be a mistake to see Russia solely through its authoritarian and military lens. It's also renowned for its rich culture, celebrating arts from literature to music, displaying a diverse and vibrant side that goes beyond political stereotypes. In the land of the Tsars, Russia, one curiosity stands out: the predominance of women in the population. Pretty intriguing, right? This demographic quirk has its roots in history, dating back over a century, with significant influences from tragic events like World War II, which claimed over 25 million Russians, mostly soldiers. The 2018 census conducted by the Russian agency Rosstat confirmed that women make up 54% of the population, contrasted with 46% of men. But it'd be too simple to chalk up this difference solely to historical military conflicts. There are other factors at play. At birth, Russia shows a rate similar to the global average, with about 1.06 boys for every girl. Interestingly, this ratio starts tilting in favor of women from the age of 25 onwards, where the number of men noticeably declines, a trend that stands out for its uniqueness compared to the global scenario. This raises questions about the underlying causes of this distinct phenomenon. Men's longevity in Russia is significantly compromised by harmful habits, notably alcoholism and smoking. On the global stage, smoking stands as a cause of death for 1 in every 10 people, with half of those deaths concentrated in just 4 countries, including Russia. This country ranks among the global leaders in the number of smokers, representing 41% of its population. In particular, male smoking in Russia is alarming, hitting 60%, while the prevalence among women is 23%. Excessive alcohol consumption is another serious public health issue, with Russia having a long cultural association with vodka. A study published in the renowned Lancet reveals that about 25% of Russian men die before the age of 55, with alcohol consumption, particularly vodka, being one of the main culprits. Currently, the average alcohol consumption per person in Russia is 13 liters of pure alcohol annually, with 8 liters of that total attributed to spirits like vodka. Believe it or not, this number represents a reduction compared to previous years. In 2012, it was reported that alcohol was linked to around 500,000 annual deaths in Russia, when the average consumption was about 32 liters per person. To put it in perspective, in Spain, the average consumption is 12.7 liters per adult, mostly split between beer, 60%, and spirits, 40%. Interestingly, until a recent past in Russia, beer wasn't considered an alcoholic beverage and could be bought and consumed by people of all ages as if it were a food or a soft drink. It wasn't until 2011, by the initiative of the then-President Dmitry Medvedev, that beer was officially categorized as an alcoholic drink. This reflects the permissive cultural attitude towards alcohol, especially among men, a serious issue that led Mikhail Gorbachev, president in 1985, to launch a campaign to combat alcoholism. So the idea was that by cutting down on alcohol consumption, there'd be a boost in productivity and an economic turnaround for the country. But things didn't quite go as planned. The booze restrictive policies ended up having some unforeseen and sometimes harmful side effects. With alcohol prices shooting up, The domestic market took a hard hit, leading to unemployment and shortages. This pushed people into seeking illegal booze options. Folks started brewing their own stuff at home and consuming things not meant for human consumption, swapping out vodka for anything from perfumes to bug sprays. A 2013 Pew Research Center study showed a stark contrast in men's and women's perspectives on alcohol consumption. While 52% of women saw it as morally wrong, only 36% of men shared that view. Man, alcohol-related recklessness doesn't spare anyone, leading to serious consequences like car crashes and drowning deaths. Another shocking example is Russian roulette, a dangerous game where you load a bullet into a revolver, spin the cylinder, and then point the gun at your own head or someone else's, pulling the trigger. This deadly game was a form of amusement for drunk aristocrats in Imperial Russia, many of whom were military folks known for their reckless courage and risky behaviors, including heavy drinking, gambling, brothel visits, and a fondness for crude jokes. Sounds like something for the super brave or totally wasted, right? Interestingly, despite its Russian origins, it was in the United States where Russian roulette caused the most fatalities. Back in 1954, there was this infamous incident where musician Johnny Ace accidentally bit the dust while playing Russian roulette on Christmas Eve, right in the middle of his gig break. Now here's a curious twist. In Perm, Russia, they came up with non-lethal versions of the game, using electronic guns to mimic Russian roulette without the deadly risk. Now when we talk about gender stats, it's pretty telling. Suicide rates, especially among men, are way up there, hitting 38 suicides per 100,000 people in 2019 and 2020, according to the World Health Organization, WHO. These sky-high suicide rates among men are often tied to emotional issues and social pressures, with easy access to lethal means making the problem even worse. Lots of guys deal with heavy emotions like deep sadness and anxiety, and the stigma around seeking help for these emotional troubles makes many hesitate to reach out, fearing social judgment. Life's hardships, like unemployment and money troubles, really pack a punch, pushing many guys into feeling downright hopeless. In a world where patriarchal and macho values rule, there's this tendency among men to put on a tough front, hiding vulnerabilities and often dodging seeking help when they really need it. And let's not forget the booze, which can crank up feelings of despair. Funny enough, even though they're not hit as directly, Russian women have their own battles within this mess. With historically fewer men around in Russia, there's this shared belief among both genders that women should count themselves lucky to snag a partner. This mindset has led many women to stick around in abusive relationships, driven by the fear of ending up alone. Domestic violence, often tied to alcohol abuse, affects about a third of women, according to the National Center for the Prevention of Violence in Moscow. Sadly, this violence is, or was, widely tolerated by society and authorities. That's reflected in a study conducted in Russia back in 2013, with 10,000 women taking part. The most alarming finding was that 37% of those surveyed agreed that husbands had the right to use physical violence against their wives. This acceptance reflects a deep-rooted belief that men's violent behavior is normal and expected. When it comes to gender equality, little progress has been made since then, especially in areas like pay and female representation in leadership roles. In Russia, despite many women having higher education and being active in the workforce, the gender pay gap is significant. Moreover, domestic violence and sexual harassment persist as critical issues in a society still marked by patriarchy and sexism. According to a publication from the Daily Beast, what's changing is women's perception of male behavior. Russian women are increasingly disappointed with potential partners, listing a bunch of grievances. These range from habits like smoking and heavy drinking to sticking to outdated gender roles, and importantly, a tendency towards violence. Faced with such a bleak relationship landscape, many have decided to embrace singledom as a conscious lifestyle choice. In Moscow, for instance, there's a significant number of single women aged 25 to 50, outnumbering single men in the same age group threefold. These Russian women often express disinterest in marrying local men, citing problematic behaviors and disproportionate demands they face, even in the workplace. Women in Russia are reevaluating their views on love and happiness, choosing alternative paths to traditional marriage. Some prefer to form bonds with partners from other countries, while others opt to remain single. rejecting conventions that don't fulfill them. These trends directly reflect in the country's declining birth rates. During a press conference in 2020, President Vladimir Putin emphasized the importance of population growth for Russia's future. However, the country's demographic situation has become even more precarious due to the war with Ukraine and the COVID-19 pandemic, which negatively impacted the population, especially the number of fertile-age men. These events have contributed to an alarming demographic scenario, presenting a significant challenge for Putin and the nation, which now faces increasing demographic complexity. This lesser-known aspect of Russian reality is an intriguing issue. I invite you to share your views in the comments and subscribe for more analyses. Thanks to everyone who followed this discussion, and until our next meeting.